But also, I think it's fair to say that if you're C-suite and you're not looking at this, whether it's Implement AI or whatever it is, and you're not looking at this, you're not doing your job. Welcome to the Implement AI podcast, the podcast where we explore the impact of AI on your business. I'm Piers Linney, alongside my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla. We cover the real-world applications and impact of how AI can be practically applied to drive growth and efficiency in your organization. We cut through the jargon to focus on actionable strategies and use cases to highlight the transformational power of AI. Let's dive into today's conversation. I'm Piers.
I'm Aalok.
So the last pod was a greatest hits episode. We seemed to go down well. And because we kind of cover so much ground that it's quite good to just kind of go over some of it again because things move very, very quickly. I think in this one, we've been, I don't know how you feel a lot, but I feel as though I need to sit at my desk for a few days now because I've got this list of things to get through and I'm just not getting through it because we're traveling, we're doing events. It's just endless, isn't it?
Multiple countries, time zones, events.
So we've been traveling quite a lot. As Aalok said, I've got us saw San Francisco. If you follow him on LinkedIn, you would have seen him on his wearing his Ray-Ban glasses, filming in a Waymo, which is like that's Aalok living his best life, as I like to say. And then I got as far as Birmingham, and not quite as far as Aalok. And we've been kind of all over the UK, really. So we're going to talk a bit about that. And then we're going to talk about, based on that experience, especially yours, Aalok, in the US, because you always think as the US is so far ahead, especially when you're in San Fran. It's like a bubble, isn't it? And then really talk about the state of AI has been what we're thinking, what we're probably working on. We've been in Istanbul, working with our team out there in terms of the AIOS version 2. We're already thinking about that. But also things like, the OpenAI announcements, what that means, and developments across the board. So stay tuned. This will be a really interesting one. So we're in Istanbul, meeting our our tech team out there. And we spend literally 3 days locked in a hotel room, going through where we are, where things are going. And also just after that, which we'll touch upon a bit later in the pod, Aalok and also some of our dev team went off to San Francisco for an event out there, which is a voice-focused event, which is quite important in terms of what we focus on. And it's just amazing seeing where we've got to and then the ideas we've got on where we can take it. So we'll touch a bit on that. And we've been to, so I've been in the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, did an event in the middle of the UK. We've done another event, actually, again, in Birmingham, actually, but the NEC a few days later. And I was a keynote at an interesting event. We've had quite a big stand there, which is Finance Forum. And that was for CFOs, people in internal finance roles. And it's very interesting talking to people in finance about their view of AI, which can be quite different to other people and the C-suite as well. So let's go through that. So, let's talk about Istanbul, really, without giving our trade secrets away. So we spent a year building the AIOS, which we're just kind of launching now. We're now going into recurring revenue. We used to have programs and we're focused on, and now we've got a platform. So a lot of our customers now are migrating onto the platform, or in many cases now are going straight to the AIOS. They don't need increasingly to go for a program.
We had a V1 platform before that as well, isn't it? Right.
Slightly more siloed, wasn't it, actually? So technically we're on V3. It's hard not to give the game away, but in terms of where we're going with it, how would you summarize it?
The way I would look at the AIOS is like it was like a step forward in being able to like almost move from some kind of tool or co-pilot to a kind of colleague, essentially, or a digital worker. And digital workers that can actually like do things like, update Salesforce, change HubSpot, like go through your SharePoint, all that kind of stuff, basically, right? Or even log into a computer and download stuff. And then where we're looking at kind of the next step is the areas where it's like the true promise of AI, basically, right? Things which can kind of keep improving by itself potentially, or things which can kind of like help you see things you couldn't see before. So, I'm not going to go into the specifics too much, but like there's some very, very powerful things that happen once you have all the elements and all the kind of data, the connections and everything like that in one place, which you cannot do without that. And what's funny is I have I have slides from 2023 where I was basically saying you need to have your own AI operating system with your own data and stuff like that in the center of it.
What's quite interesting, isn't it, is people often ask us, well, do the AIs learn? And the answer is not in a kind of machine learning kind of way, but they can learn, okay? Without giving too much detail away, they can learn because you got an objective and has it achieved the objective? And if not, why? And what do you change to improve upon that? So we are looking now at our AI is learning. So we've gone from kind of, we talked about this before on the pod, from kind of AIs to teams, which is what we kind of deploy typically. I'd say horizontal teams where there are different agents, digital workers with different skill sets, capabilities, but also sometimes the same agent, which might be tweaked slightly, like a vertical team as well. So I would like to think about this kind of like it's like a tower block almost with different departments that we're kind of deploying. But the next iteration of the AIOS, which is going to be probably early next year, end of this year, we'll start trialing it, is going to start to be intelligent in terms of actually optimizing what they do.
I'll give you an interesting segue, right? So, and as in States, which we'll come to later on, but like as I have quite a deep conversation because I've been working on a concept and working on some articles which will come out soon, basically around how do you quantify and benchmark human intelligence or human work, basically, right? Like, because like, you think okay, I've got a full-time person in that role, so that's like, 2,000 hours, like, 50 weeks, 40 hours a week. But then the question then comes into like, how often do they achieve their objective, right? What's that level? Second thing is like, how many hours do you get of objective seeking behavior? Because if you take away meetings, updates, time off, this holiday, stuff like that, you tend to end up like around 50%, if 60% of time. So 1,000 hours or 1,200 hours of the 2,000. And then some very interesting things I was having conversations around is like, what makes a good worker? Because that's all the kind of stuff we're solving as well to like be within our AI agents as well, for the digital workers. So some very interesting things you start to unpack when you start looking at this. So our goal is with this is to like make it even easier for business leaders and at the same time give some visibility around and ways to kind of like almost capture the knowledge to kind of improve on it as well,
And
basically.
what was interesting just on that, we had quite a debate about this, is that if you think about a digital worker, right, everything they do is digital. So you've got the data, you can capture it, you can do something with it. But actually, think about your human resource, your colleagues, your employees. They're typically interacting with technology. So you can kind of measure what they're doing as well. So it becomes quite interesting where you're optimizing the digital workers, but also potentially the entire team, that kind of machine human partnership. So that's kind of what's coming down the road. Let's go back to our kind of movements around the country. So I did an event in Birmingham, and this was the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. If you're watching or listening, hello. And that was a really interesting event at Edgbaston, the home of cricket sort of thing. Sorry, Lords, if you get upset by that. So, and it's interesting that, when we talk about what's our ICP, often what we'll say is, we don't do kind of heavy industrial or heavy manufacturing. But what's interesting is increasingly when you're talking to businesses, it's any business, literally any business can. I defy anybody really to come and talk to us with any business across any sector where we can't find a use case. We're having to build something special that our current AIOS can't in some way add some value. It's everything. I mean, so we've got law firms. We're talking to light manufacturing. Um, and the point is, it might be not the regulated activity, whether you're in finance, you're doing wealth management or financial advice. It might not be legal advice. It might not be a diagnosis. But apart from that moment, and that's going to come, right? One day, the regulators will want AIs to do that, not humans, because they're going to be infallible. But apart from that, every single process workflow from sales support, compliance, customer success, churn, you name it, every business in some ways has quite similar functions, finance, credit control. And increasingly, we're finding the demand for it is starting to go through the roof. I always say it's like a dam, isn't it, Aalok? That it's kind of the pressure's building, and there's going to come a day where that dam's gonna break. So that was Birmingham. And then a really interesting one, we were at the, Finance Forum, so working with, Closest still on one of their new events, and that was a great event. So we had like a stand really, which was it wasn't really manned, we were kinda hanging around a bit, but we had Lexi, our, AI agent there, and she was on a TV screen, and you can basically, take a photo or point your camera at the QR code and literally talk to her. And it's very interesting talking to people, finance professionals, because they're coming at it from a different place. And I think what I heard there was there's probably several hundred people there. And they're now beginning to ask questions about, okay, we've got challenges now in terms of the cost of labor, talent. How do I use this technology? So it's not just the leaders, the C-suite. It's now the finance professionals that want to know how can they deploy this.
I agree, and you know, you mentioned about the kind of like pressures on different things. Just not to segue too much, but like there's like I've been going down some kind of like internet rabbit holes based on like kind of like macro geopolitics and like you know the way things are kind of going against different stuff, and you can totally see the way you've got like the way the kind of like world is balancing, and then you add technology on top of that, and then the you know the way that countries are trying to like battle for supremacies or companies and things like this, and like there are huge forces which are kind of like make it harder for businesses if they don't adopt technology, and so there's some real opportunities for those that kind of like start learning the best, basically, right? Those that kind of embrace it and understand the new way of working and can augment their team are going to be in a much better place. And I really do feel that within the next 2 years, 3 years, there's going to be some profound things that we're going to see, basically.
I think it's fair to say that if you're C-suite, right, and you're not looking at this, and I don't know, whether it's simply with AI or whatever it is, and you're not looking at this, you're not doing your job.
You're negligent.
That's another word. That's another way of describing it. Yeah.
That's the word, right? Like, so if you know that like there's going to be a profound implication, which is going to change and address your cost structure, your competitive position, your opportunities, your future ability to kind of like transact and raise capital, all of those things are there basically, right? And if you don't have at least a kind of like detailed plan around, you know, like what your workforce is going to need, what your market segment's going to need, what our customer expectations going to change to, what's the cost structure implications going to be, that you have to have thought about all this stuff and at least have a plan, because what you don't realize is that just like you always say, there'll be a red dot when you always show that kind of exponential curve, because at any one point you're on an exponential curve, but that's changing all the time, and you are negligent, right? There will be a case that when some businesses fail and someone didn't take address of this, you were asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, it's like I wrote an article which is slightly going slightly further out, but I wrote an article about it was like 1,800 days, whatever it is, to this new intelligence arriving on Earth. So if you imagine that in 5 years, you kind of knew that in 3 to 5 years, you've been forewarned that there's some super intelligence, some alien species was going to arrive on our planet, and it had technologies that we didn't fully understand. Everybody would freak out. You know, the UN would be in session permanently. Politicians would be, talking about this constantly. Countries would be working together and collaborating, trying to work out what to do about it. And that's basically what's going to happen. But we're not seeing that response. And whether that's nation state level or in your organization, I think I was really interested to see these finance professionals that they weren't that interested in AI sort of 12 months ago. They really were sort of all over it, really. And then we went to the other extreme. We were back in Birmingham, NEC, which is a massive like conference venue in the UK. For the Festival of Entrepreneurs, the first event put on by some people we know very well. Well done to them for putting on the event. But that's more early stage companies. So now you're looking and talking to entrepreneurs, hence the name, that are looking at, okay, I want to start a business, or I've done it before and I want to start a new business. So they've got some experience. How do I do it AI first? And they're the ones that you should be worrying about.
Because they're the ones that can move much faster, basically, right? Like if you've got like all your industry contacts, you know what's going on, and you can basically go about an opportunity by like, look, I can offer. Let's just say, for example, like you're in a business where you kind of like, you know, I can't reveal too much, but like, but the point is like, you can change your cost structure, you can change how much you will pay people, so they'll be more likely to work with you. You can change your availability to people that are trying to buy services from you or different things like that. You know, because you have much more real time availability from be able to communicate with many people. There's so many things you can kind of do now. And they're at Festival Entrepreneurs, right? I had some very interesting talks. We're going to talk about your keynote, the conversations you had, and then I can talk about some of the ones that I had because I did 2 sessions the following
Yeah,
day.
so my key is a more tend to be more high level thought leadership, but it's about the kind of the exponential. But what was interesting though after it is when we talk to some people who have established businesses and they hear that keynote, they come over and say, you know what? And we had this conversation with 3 people in the last couple of weeks, is to say, I'm in this sector, but quite a big organization. It's got lots of legacy and policies and processes and workflows and people and cost. if I could start this again, AI first, and the words they used was, I could crush it. That's the competition you should worry about. It's not the incumbents, or it is the incumbents that use AI before you do. There's those. And the other ones are the ones that are starting new businesses that do what you do, AI first. And those ones are going to be the winners.
I mean, like, to give an example, I was with my friend in Manchester yesterday, and then I was telling him about Cybertruck I saw when I was in the States, and he was like, "Yeah," I said that they're banned in the UK because, like, obviously they go too fast and they weigh too much. But I showed him a video where basically the Cybertruck is drag racing a Porsche, basically, right? So imagine you've got like a normal diesel or petrol engine car, and you're like, okay, let me stick some, like self-driving on the steering wheel or whatever like this to lane keep or whatever like this. That's one type of iteration or application. The other thing is that when you've got something which is like completely designed for this kind of AI first era, essentially, and that Tesla, Cybertruck is like drag racing a Porsche while towing a Porsche, and it still beats it in a drag race. Like so, if the right vehicle, purposefully designed for the right sector, is going to be just much faster. It's going to be able to like reach more people, gain more insights. There's just going to be so much more you can do with it, basically, and you'll need less people for those ones.
Go through the workshops then.
Yeah, so basically, so like yeah, on Thursday I was doing like 2 workshops basically, right? And the point there was like, first of all was like rethinking your business AI first, and then like how to spot opportunities. And so I spent an hour and 20 minutes, and there was like a lot of people actually stayed for the whole thing. I was quite impressed actually. But there was a mixture of consultants, there was a mixture of people that own multi-location businesses. I had quite a mix actually, and there was a few people that were looking to kind of move into kind of like a digital business in some way, but they weren't sure about it. And there were other like lots of consultants. And really what I did is I took them through like, how you can start to like deconstruct roles. So how you can start looking at like, jobs that you wish were being done in your business. And you look at like, the frames of like revenue, driving revenue, increasing capacity, or transforming the experience to like where you can find those opportunities. So revenue is quite obvious, but it's based on like, reactivation or out of hours and all that kind of stuff. Capacity is like for sales, support, or success, helping people be more looked after and offering that higher touch experience. And the third thing, experience, is like, this is the kind of this poorly understood sometimes. It's about having that kind of like journey of one for a customer, because there are some customers, if you talk to them in a very specific way and show them specific things, they'll buy more from you basically, right? So the point is like how to personalize that kind of experience. And when I went through that, we then did a workshop session where they basically start answering questions and selecting things. And I was very impressed actually, because they were giving lots of examples. And you know what actually impresses me the most? It's not the young people that see the opportunities. It's the more experienced people in business, basically, right? Like I saw, several people that they were just listening to me, and you could tell that like they probably hadn't listened to too much about AI before, but then when they were listening, they were like, these are real opportunities, basically. We're having a conversation about the different bits afterwards. And then quite a few of them also said 2 things. I would like to be able to like develop this and sell it to all the other businesses in my sector. That's an interesting one, because there's always an idea behind the idea, isn't it? Right? There's that. And I had several of those conversations. And then the other conversations was around, we're doing this right now for these customers, but I can see with AI, I could offer this service or do these things, basically, right? And so they're the very interesting ones where they're like either expanding the reach or services or products that they currently sell, or they're looking at new opportunities they can go after. Or some of them is almost like, there was one guy who was asking me like, works with pets, and basically there was a thing he was trying to automate, but he was stuck on one point. So I just gave him a bit of superficial guidance with my elementary electronics knowledge, but I was just explaining like, a way they could kind of put something together with some Raspberry Pi, Arduino, and a few things
It's
like
going
that
to
to
get
kind of just get this bit right.
someone's dog's going to get electrocuted.
No, no, they're not, they're not. But I said that once they appear in a spreadsheet, I can take over that basically, right? So the point was like they wanted the data to suddenly go from a collar into a system, and then there was a whole lot of other things. And I said, look, if you do this, scan the collar, it'll be the spreadsheet. Then we can take it from the spreadsheet, basically, right? So, but it was quite
Well,
interesting to
I had
see
the
like
same thing
people
in
thinking,
my someone asked a question, and he was a guy probably in my kind of vintage, and he was something like, "Hello, yeah, well, what happens to people like me who've been in this business forever? We're going to retire in 5 to 10 years. What are we going to do?" And I said exactly what you just said. I said, "Well, if you understand this technology, you're the ones actually that can leverage it the most, because you understand the business, you understand the customers, you understand how you want to serve those customers, but you're doing it in an old-fashioned way." It's the new people coming in who understand the technology because they've grown up with it, but don't have the market experience. They're at a disadvantage.
they don't know the dead ends. They don't know, they don't know like what looks like an opportunity isn't really an opportunity. They don't know like, oh, this opportunity is great, but like the cost structure or the profit margin won't support it because of this. They don't understand all that
No,
stuff
so
basically, right? You know,
the
like,
point we're getting at here, right, if you're listening or watching this, is this: if you've got a business, you really are, yeah, you got to start probably the wrong word, but working towards AI first, because they're the ones that are going to be the optimal businesses and the ones going to be very, very hard to compete with. It's not going to be easy. You got to start somewhere. We all start in our slides, start small, but really do think big. And by think big, we mean AI first. And that's the key to success going forward.
no, totally agree. And then one of the ones that I was talking about quite a bit was I was showing examples of as part of a sales team. I show what the full AI sales team looks like. One of them is like a research agent, which is like almost like helping prospect intelligence or research. And when I start showing some examples of like what you can discover on a person or what you can discover on a company, then people like all the lights started going off. Like they were like, actually, could we check this, this, and this? And like, yes. And then another interesting conversation we were having at some point at a lunch, Piers, was like where we were talking about like the opportunities of like new data streams basically, right? Like one of the conversations was around like high frequency trading or foreign exchange and all that kind of stuff. That's solved, right? Because those data streams are kind of open, and then people can kind of like just work off those. But the opportunity of like arbitrage is like still there, where there's a new data stream which didn't exist before, where you create it either by analyzing Google Earth images in real time, or analyzing company filings in real time, or
Or
whatever it
just
is
phone
basically.
calls.
Or phone calls, but like, but I'm thinking about like some bigger
Yeah.
kind of arbitrage, like so like there is something in there. So open question for the pod: if someone's got an idea that like, okay, if I could get this data stream to be unlocked, and there's like some huge opportunity from behind that, you should get in touch and like see how you can seize on that
And also
basically.
on that though,
So
we were talking about it quite a lot. Robots. We've got a Destiny robot. If you don't follow on LinkedIn, please give Destiny Robot a follow on LinkedIn. And the point there is about Destiny, right? Is it's a bit of fun, but at the end of the day, you've got to start thinking about these units, whether it's humanoid, whether it's quadruped, whether it looks like a flipping rumba, whatever it is. You've got to think about these units that are now navigating our built environment, and they're covered in sensors. So vision, LiDAR, radar, audio, you name it. And those sensors are collecting information. And the question then is, what do you do with it? These are data streams that never existed before, aren't they? So forget the robot almost. Think of the robot as a mobile data collection system.
if you look at the most elementary application of that, which could actually be useful, because until robots have like the hand, which is like fully like versatile like a human hand, because I mean like m- high percentage of the brain of our brain is dedicated to actually the motor function of the hand basically, right? Like so they're trying to like solve those things. But just to go one step further, so you think about elderly care, right? So imagine, for example, someone's living by themselves and they're a bit older, and you worry about them basically, right? One solution is try and have a load of ring cameras everywhere, but then people don't necessarily want that in that one way. But the other way is to have, like, for example, if you have a home care robot that could almost do certain things, or at least be some kind of companionship or whatever like this, but it's keeping an eye on you, like how much movement you're doing, what's your heart rate like, what's this, what's that. And then if you have an issue, it could then potentially assist on something or get something for you or whatever like that, basically. I think there's all sorts of new applications that will be kind of coming, because I remember there's actually some technology which will basically be monitoring all the plugs in your house. And if you don't go to the kitchen and make a tea, it knows you've not made a tea in a bit of time, basically, right? So then it thinks you might have fallen or something like that, right? But these are very crude compared to a robot that could actually be there with you and say, actually, do you know what? Can you help me with this?
When you see Alok and I around at events and hanging out with robots in Starbucks, which did happen, humanoid robots, we're not interested really in building robots or delivering robots or oiling robots. What we're interested in is the AI agent teams, the digital work teams that are going to manage the robots and do something with the data. And it could be as simple as alerting somebody because there's a window open, or there's somebody in the warehouse. Well, when you've scanned their face, you don't recognize them. So robots are going to be key. Another thing that came out of the events, you were saying a lot, and then we'll move on. A lot of people have, like, consultants. They have lots of ideas about who could use this technology. So we are building out. We've got an introducer partner program, which is kind of growing, but we are going to be building out a kind of a co-branded reseller offering probably next year. And eventually that might become a full reseller offer, depending what the demand is for it. So we are working on that. So if you're a consultant, you've got a a lot of companies you think of them benefit from AI, let us know. Get in touch and sign up for that. So listen, so if you're not used to our podcast, if you're we get lots of people now come up to me, Aalok, and they say, "Hello, Piers. I'm a big fan." And I think, "Oh, right. Then what's they saw me on TV." And they go, "No, I follow your pod." Amazing. Fantastic, isn't it? So the pods are growing. We're kind of spending a lot of time on kind of get this up to the top 10 in UK management, top 50 in business if we can get there. But we've got lots of other resources. So go to our website. We've got a resource center. We've got white papers. We've got videos. We've got demos, a lot of information out there. Follow us on LinkedIn. So I puts out a lot of content, kind of workshops, practical use case to how to use AI as well. And I've got articles and then I've got a newsletter, a bit more kind of thought leadership as well. So follow us on LinkedIn. But the important thing is, if you enjoy the pod, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. It really does help us. Let's move on then, more to your travels, perhaps, because you always think that the US is light years ahead of us in terms of AI. And especially when you're in San Fran, you were sending me pictures of, every single bus has got an advert for AI agents on the back of it. So just talk us through your experience there.
Yeah, absolutely. So went to San Francisco and like as soon as I landed and I was getting in the taxi from the airport, I noticed immediately several like large SaaS companies are on billboards and they're all talking about the AI feature and function. Without exception, every single billboard was talking about AI, honestly. Like whether it was like an existing one, like there was Figma, for example, talking about their like AI, generation bits of it. Then there was also like HubSpot talking about their kind of AI in their CRM and stuff like this. Then you've got like your Salesforce ones. Then you've got like so many companies I've never heard of, but they've got like, the AI for this, and then they've got like, ones which are like even the adverts are like I'm thinking like it's not even clear what you do basically, but I there's a dot AI at the end of it. So you've got everything there. So that was very interesting, and then I went to a Voice AI conference, and, like, we were presenting there to, like, demo our AIOS, and it was very interesting because, like, all the sessions that were there, it was basically a who's who of, like, the cutting edge in kind of, like, voice technology, and also, like, in elements in the digital worker space, and there was a mixture from, like, engineers from, like, massive healthcare companies or finance companies or different stuff, and people at different elements of, like, investigation at this stage, or there's some people with startups, or there was a lot of companies trying to sell as part of the stack as well, basically, right? And that was observing there. But when I went to a few workshops, I think there was few things I saw. One, in terms of like, like what is kind of going on is like it's very early still. There's so many things which are still coming in terms of technology and improvements and upgrades. And some of the things that I'm frustrated with, to be honest, like we are state of the art. Like I just say that, right? Basically, like, I compare that to like what a lot of people what they were having issues and stuff like that with. And I was like, everyone's got those issues because I asked it a few at a few questions at the panels about different things and very specific stuff. That I'm like, how do we get great control over this? How do we get reproducibility here? And they were like, to be honest, that we're all struggling with that right now. So so those things will improve as well, but it's already very very good. Second thing is like when it comes to agents doing actual work, that's so early. I was quite surprised actually that there wasn't more kind of visible in that space, but then obviously that will kind of like come, but there is that within there, that area. And what was quite funny as well is I was in a workshop with somebody and I was just talking to them and they're an engineer and they were looking at opportunities and they were like saying, well, this is kind of done, this opportunity is kind of over. And I was like, what do you mean? Basically, he goes, well, there's adverts everywhere and everyone here is kind of doing this. And I thought to myself, my God, you're like, it's a bubble within a bubble, basically.
It's like that. I wrote a newsletter about this, about it's all infrastructure now, isn't it? It's like NVIDIA and AI models and, it's like ISPs and back in the day, isn't it? And Cisco back in the internet sort of boom. And then a lot of these companies that are kind of going great guns now, I think they're the pets.com. They're kind of they're burning cash. They haven't really got a model. They've got super high churn. A lot of it's nonsense. And there is a little bit of a bubble. And people always say to me, "Oh, Piers, do you think there's an AI bubble?" And I'm kind of like, well, they might deflate slightly, but it's like Amazon's share price graph in 1996. It goes up 10, 20x, and then it crashes by about 10x. Everyone's like, "Oh my goodness." When you zoom out 20 years later, it's gone through the roof quite literally.
Correct. And it's the category. It's like e-commerce basically, right? Like or social media or whatever you want to call it, right? the category of like intelligence being infused into work is enormous, basically. So there's that. And so it was very interesting to kind of see all those different bits and then, understand what technology is coming. And there's all sorts of like very cool things kind of moving it forward. But it's just going to go into everything, basically, right? Like I was having a conversation with somebody, and we were in a cafe, okay, and I was basically saying that like when you start adding in some different elements, there's a very cool element that we'll be adding into our agents, where our agent can be on the call with somebody, and then if somebody says, "Oh," I'll give an example, like it's on a call with you, and it's like I'm collecting rent for you, and say like, "Hey, you're overdue on your rent," and you say, "Sorry, I'm going to pay next week," and you say, "Look, if you don't pay by this Friday, I'm going to have to, this is me like a £200 fine based on that," right? And the person then saying to the AI, "No, no, 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 please, please, I need Monday to like do it and stuff like this." And then the AI says, "Okay, hang on a moment." And the AI will then either message or call the human to see like the manager to see like, "This is the scenario, what should I do?" And then the human can then message back saying, "It's okay, approve it as long as it's done by Monday," or whatever, or they can say on the phone. And then the agent can go back
There's a
to the person
human
saying,
in the loop
"Do you know?"
in
Yeah,
real time
in real
as
time,
opposed
human
to
in the loop,
set.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're adding that in our system, and then the person can then be like, the agent can say, "I got approval from my manager. This is the kind of thing." And I was explaining that like how many opportunities does that one thing unlock? Because we were in a cafe in central London. I said I call this like a kind of ephemeral opportunities or avocado business, where basically like it's not ready, not ready, not ready, and then it's too late, basically, right? So there's all sorts of like evaporating opportunities. So the example I gave was that we were in a cafe and it was quite quiet at that time, right? And I was saying that imagine, for example, that there was like a membership of local people for this thing, and they say like, okay, when it's quiet and we have more than 6 tables or 10 tables or whatever it is available, we can send an SMS or an offer or whatever it is like that to local people saying like, look, we're actually offering our local resident offer, which is like all this for less than whatever price, but I only have 6 tables, whatever like this, right? Like then people could be straight away saying, actually, I'm going to be ready right now. Can I come in with this or do that kind of stuff? Like you could activate that whole system. And if they've got exception questions, the manager could answer it. So there's all sorts of opportunities. Or for example, someone's got an issue with their like, the plumbing thing is broken down and they want to get more information on something. But they're like, I can get it. I will approve it today, but I need you to come by this time, basically, right? Normally people say these sorts of things. So then a manager could be like, yes, I could definitely make sure that happens at that time. So there's all sorts of like new opportunities you can unlock by creativity.
Which we talked about before is if you've got recorded phone calls and a reason behind a new product, there's literally money just sitting on the table to go and get analyze them, analyze the calls, find the missed opportunities, and do something about it.
And then human in the loop, talking about that. So I was in a Waymo. So Waymo, if anyone doesn't know, there's autonomous taxis, basically, right? So when you're walking around San Francisco, you will see them. It's a bit like being in watching RoboCop, right? You see these self-driving cars with like a kind of a lidar sensor on the top of it, and you see them driving around very smoothly with no person inside them, and you think that's insane, basically,
I
right?
think
Like in the
everybody
normal.
should be made. Hopefully, they arrive here because I don't know what you think a lot. I mean, you've done it. I haven't done it. Once you sat in one of those, you've got to think, "Oh, hang on a minute, things are about to change."
A number of times I was crossing the road and there's just 2 Waymos parked at the red light and there's no one inside it. It's like being in the future, honestly. And I think when you understand the sophistication of technology that's possible, and like, so I was being driven around, no worries at all. And there was one place where I was in a turn, basically, and a car in front had broken down halfway through a turn. So I was interested how the AI would handle it. It thought the person was going to complete the turn. It didn't. So then I pressed the escalate button. Someone from a call center answers the phone, and I explained what's going on, that the car in front is broken down. He goes, "No problem, give me a moment." They then remote pilot it around it, and then it just goes automatically through. Like, that technology is already here. It's profound, and it was not expensive. It was actually probably cheaper than, a human-driven one, right? It's people just don't understand, robotics, like, digital workers, intelligence infused into everything, autonomous browsers, like the very way that work will be done and what the value the person adds in terms of the ideas or the application or the domain knowledge and the speed is going to be even more. You're basically going from, the best way I can put it, right? You're going from an individual musician, trumpet, trombone, maybe I can do a few things, and Prince could play many things, right? To, the conductor, where you've got like an entire ensemble of like, different instruments, but you can then orchestrate and conduct all of that
But
stuff,
as I was saying before, I
It's
said this before, you can have an orchestra if you want to, or you can have a quartet or a jazz band, or the drums or the
it's
percussion. You can choose what you want to do.
exactly.
So let's just try and keep these things reasonably short. But let's just talk a bit about So the US, you've got lots of people doing vertical AIs. You've got people trying to do AI specialist AIs in different sectors. We're still quite different, even in the US, than the horizontal kind of play in our offering. But also,
Yes,
you've got the SaaS companies who are trying to embed AI because I think they can see the writing on the wall. And one of the ones that I always
correct.
thought about was things like Zapier or Make. And you've seen now, let's talk about OpenAI just quickly at the end of the pod about their announcements because they are profound in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So OpenAI, like they announced the developer day that they're like, they're going to introduce their own kind of agent app store over time. They've also got like ways that they can like, work with different things. They showed an example where you're kind of like working on a essentially a pitch deck, and then you get it to be actually made in Canva for you in that kind of way. I think all these things are kind of coming in greater bound because like if you think about Salesforce or any CRM, it's a filing cabinet. Like in the real world, it's a filing cabinet basically, right? So you're paying X amount a year for a filing cabinet, okay? But you still need people to use the filing cabinet and know what to look for and put the thing in and oh, you put the file in the wrong folder. Oh dear, basically, right? All that kind of stuff, basically, right? So there's that. But then on top of it now, it's like more like the digital worker and the filing cabinet basically together, right? And so that's the profound shift that you have to think about. So you almost need to like erase your knowledge of like digital transformation and different things and think de novo from new principles. But OpenAI's got some very interesting stuff kind of coming on. And in the developer day, they were talking about like how many tokens a second or tokens a minute they're basically processing versus before. I think before they had 2 million developers building on it. Now it's 4 million developers, but it's like billions of tokens a second. And the point there is that like this is just going to be infused into everything basically. Like every single pixel will be created by AI. Every single, workflow or opportunity will be, checked by AI. You create a document, it'll be checking, is it in line with the latest brand guidelines, for example, right? You're creating a document, it's going to be checking, like, is it in line with the latest compliance guidelines that were just published at
What's your
6:01
what's
a.m.
your
this
view though?
morning?
When you look at things like Zapier or it always makes me kind of smirk where you see that OpenAI has got a demo working with Canva. Then you see things like and Photoshop and Adobe where they're kind of eating them alive.
Yes and no, because the biggest barrier is basically not the technology. The biggest barrier is the people that can implement it, essentially, right? Like, and so the way I see this is that, like, most business owners are not going to be able to like learn enough because there's quite a lot you need to understand, and especially when you talk about cybersecurity stuff. I'm not going to go into that detail there, but there's a whole lot of things you need to be aware of. If you don't do things properly, you're in real problem, basically, right? Let's leave it at that. But then the point is like you cannot suddenly learn all these new things to the industrial level or enterprise level that you need to transact and do in your business. So you're going to be reliant on people that can do it for you, but then it's going to be a question of what they can do. I remember a long time ago, right? Like when I was younger, I had like a shoulder operation basically, and it's typical me. I was researching and trying to figure out which one will give me the greatest mobility afterwards, blah blah stuff like this. And so I remember talking to the surgeon. I said, "Well, this paper shows this approach." He said, "Oh, look, it does, right? But I've done this other procedure 10,000 times, basically, right? So I know if I do this one for you." It'll be fine, but may not get as much as that, but this. But if you want that, then you're gonna ask me to do something I've never really done before. I was like, "You know what? Forget that." Like, go with what So in the same way, it's like what people are used to building with and doing with, they'll still use basically, right? So I think there'll be a fragmented market for different levels of implementation. I always think about, the depth of the technology implementation you're trying to do, whether it's a superficial use case or a deeper use case or a completely profound use case. It's going to dictate the tools you use, basically, right? So I think it will
I
evolve
think
essentially.
also, so it's good to hear that we are kind of state of the art. But I think also, if you're still, it's still quite abstract for a lot of people. And I think if you're still struggling with AI, I think go to YouTube and go find it was launched in the last like week is Figure AI '03, right? So this is not Destiny. This is a slightly different class of Destiny's our robot. It's slightly different class of robot that can do ironing, pack your dishwasher, work around the house. I don't know how much those things are. Probably 50, 100 grand currently. One day they'll be 5K. Go look at Figure and then also go look at a YouTube video of Sora 2. And that will give you an idea of where video's got to and where robotics have got to. And again, we always say AI today is the worst it's ever going to be.
When I was in the US, I went for a drive around Stanford, and I was actually looking at their courses, and I was thinking I wouldn't mind studying something in robotics, but I ain't got time for that. Like it's too many things going on.
Yeah, you've got enough to do. So on that note, we've both got enough to do. We're going to go and do some work. It's the weekend, but hey, we still got to go and do some work. Again, if you like the pod, please do leave a review. Share it with your network. Go to our website. We've got our resource center. We've got white papers, demos, more information in there as well. If you're interested in working with us or deploying AI in a business,
or introducing to companies.
if you've got businesses, if you're a consultant, you think could benefit from AI, sign up as a partner as well. It's all on the website. Talk to Lexi. That's how you get into our kind of sales pipeline. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Implement AI podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how we can assist you and your business in leveraging AI for growth and efficiency, visit our website at implementai.io. Don't forget to subscribe to the Implement AI podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.